Welcome to class tonight. We are in brain training for business, and tonight we're covering module 4, turning goals into plans. Yep. So we're covering module 4, turning goals into plans. An overview, there are some ways that people get hung up on goal setting. And so we're going to get over some of those hurdles with goal setting tonight and give your brain some easier ways of connecting with recognizing your path forward and developing another aspect of what we need to manage our business, to maintain our business, and to grow it to the level that is sustainable for us. So the topic is goals into plans. So when I talk to audiences, sometimes I'll ask, how many of you just love goal setting? And I'll see the room go quiet, and I'll have maybe like 1 or 2 really enthusiastic people raise their hand, but everybody else is silent, averting their eyes, looking at the floor. And so then that helped me recognize there's a whole backstory in goal setting. And the reason why so many of us almost dread goal setting is because of our history. And there's a few things that we do that can make setting goals easier or make it a dread, something that we are uncomfortable with. So typically what we do when we pick a goal is we identify, here's where I am, there's where I want to be, and you can see that mountaintop, and then we create something. I'm gonna, hike that mountain. I'm gonna do X, Y, Z, whatever that goal is. And then here's what happens is that in the process of picking this goal, we actually have some ways that we set the mind up for failure. One way is that the idea of goal setting has very rigid success and failure attached. It's also a very small window. So you can see on this photo that I have here of a soccer field, you have this wide, vast soccer field, and then the goalposts are these little bars way at the end. And anything outside of those bars is not a goal. It doesn't count. So we kind of map this over to our same awareness with goals. In fact, I remember a client that came in and she had a goal. Her goal was, I want to work out 5 days a week during this time. And what happened is that she came in the next week and she said, I didn't meet my goal. And I'm like, well, how well did you do? And she said, oh, well, I only worked out 3 days out of the week instead of 5. So sometimes if we're too rigid with this goal setting, we can actually not be recognizing that we are making progress in this as we're moving forward. So recognize that typically goal setting, we have this idea of success and failure, small window, and then we also have a past history to goal setting and what we've experienced. So this is how that works. There's a typical, we call it the goal setting cycle. There are ways that we experience goal setting that are very similar. So typically we start with the goal. I want to climb the mountain, work out 3 times a week, build a business, whatever that is. And we pick the distance, this place. Here's where I am, point A. Over here, something I want is point B. And then we define the steps in between point A and point B. And if we're really detailed, we might even make it a SMART goal. Specific, measurable, achievable on a timeline, right? You probably heard that before. But then what happens? Well, maybe we're really excited, really motivated at first, but then a few days go by, a few more days go by, And then what happens? We're falling off the wagon. And then we start to get annoyed with ourselves. We lose motivation, and then finally we're ready to let the goal go. But before we do, we then berate ourselves for all of the ways that we didn't follow through. Oh, I'm just lazy, undisciplined, unmotivated. What makes me think I'll do it this time, right? And then finally we give up on this goal. We tuck it into the graveyard with the goals of the past, and there it lies until the next time we go to set a goal. Maybe it's a similar goal because we didn't finish that last one, or maybe it's a different goal. But then what happens? We get visitations from the ghosts of goals past. These ghosts come out of the graveyard. You're just lazy, undisciplined, unmotivated. I've heard this one before. What makes you think you'll do it this time? Right? So these are the things that our mind does in the background when we think about setting a goal. It's not just about that moment. It's about our whole history. Every time we didn't follow through or that we did fall short. And so sometimes through the typical goal setting cycle, we can have the wind knocked out of our sails even before we get started. So this can be a defeating process for people. So very simple way, call it a plan. Don't do goals anymore, call it a plan. Yes, it's semantics. However, your brain, we've talked about this before, how our brain relates to language and how that language has an effect in what we see, hear, think, and feel, right? So just by calling it a plan, notice the difference. If you have had that goal dread in the past, a goal really has a connotation that's different from a plan. A goal is often very rigid thinking, success and failure. However, a plan has more wriggle room. It has a little more flexibility. We're often making plans and adjusting plans to create the result that we want. And it's this very idea of adjusting that can help us be successful and move forward. Typically also a plan is a little more detailed. It's a little more lined out. We have a series of steps. It is a process, which is also something that we want the mind to focus on in context of achievement and achieving things. So get rid of that hurdle of goals by calling it a plan. Now, if we want to dial it in even a little bit more, we can create a smarter plan. So the smarter plan is this acronym: specific, measurable, achievable. So these are some ways that people don't dial in their plan well enough to really create ease with achieving it. So one of these ways is specific. So if our goal is too vague, I want to build a good business. I want to build a strong business. It's too vague. We don't know exactly what we're going for. And if you've heard me talk before about the power of the mind and our ability to focus, the more we get specific, the more easily our mind can kind of wrap around what we're trying to create. And so be specific. Get clear about what you're creating. Now the next one is measurable. Have some sort of measure. How will you know when you've achieved this goal? If you've built a good business, a successful business, what is the measure that lets you know that you're there? Is it earning a certain level of income? Is it seeing so many clients a month or having so many sales? Or is it reaching so many people or filling your events? So the measure of it is also important because that's a way that we can track our results, but also in light of having a plan, we can also create that flexibility to create those results. And then the next one is achievable. Now, achievable also refers to, is it within your power? So you may not be able to make sure that 20 people sign up with you because that's part of their decision, but you can make sure that you talk with 50 people a week, and out of that 50 people, there is a percentage that are willing and ready and wanting to work with you. So achievable relates to, is it within your power, or is your goal dependent on someone else or something else? So achievable, make sure it's within your ability. Realistic. Now, realistic, thinking about how much time it's going to take, giving it a chunk of time. And we're going to talk about mapping out timelines and stuff a little more today. So make sure that it's within that reasonable time frame. And then on a timeline, this is a really important part of creating that forward momentum, is what are the steps along the way? What are you going to do as you're moving forward? Whether it's a scheduler, a planner, some way that you're tracking your timeline. And then E is for evaluate. So this is an adjustment to the SMART goals theme. Evaluate is looking at what is the progress that you've made? How can you address if it's your strategy is working? And then review. And I really like the reward. So how are you going to review your results and reward yourself for the hard work that you've been putting in? So now we're going to, our third strategy here is to make your plan brain friendly. And this is a really important principle in working with your focus, your motivation. And to give you an illustration of this is to think about, here, I've got a picture here. This story I'm going to share with you comes from my days as a whitewater raft guide. You can see a few characters there on a boat. And this was day 3 down White Horse Rapid on the Deschutes River. And all of us we had about 4 boats. And we had been on this river navigating, the waterways. And we come up to White Horse Rapid. Now, White Horse Rapid is class 5 on the rating system, and so it's a little bit tricky. To give you an idea of the rating system of rivers, a class 1 is still water, no current. Now class 2 is a little bit of a current, some bumps and giggles, kind of fun water. Class 3 is where the guides would bet on who they would dump out of their boat because it's easy to pick them up when you dump your people out. Class 4 is you better know what you're doing because people could get hurt, so it is serious. Class 5, well, nobody runs a class 5, and and that's another story. Or class 6, considered unrunnable. So White Horse Rapid, we're coming up to that, and we park the boats to pull our boats off to the shore so that we can get an overlook at how the water is running that day. And as we park our boats and head up to look out over the water, we see the twists and turns of the river. And with a little more water, as if the levels are higher, the whole map of the river can change. The eddies can change, the currents can twist. So this is a class 4 rapid, and we're parked our boats, we're looking at the water, and we're picking our route around this big rock right in the middle. Right in the middle was this called Oshmack Rock. But as guides, we had another name for it, not Oshmack. Anyway, so we're looking out over the river. Everybody is watching. We're pointing out our pathway to the clients that are with us and teaching them about the water and the currents and how that water moves. And there is a current that wraps right around that rock. So it's right in the middle. And you want to catch this current and it'll pull you right around the rock. If you hit it wrong, you could actually get your boat smashed up against that rock, and you'd end up in a rescue situation, have to pull everything off the rock because the force of the water would pin it. So we're heading back to our boats. Our fearless leader, Martin, he had been on that river 9 years. He definitely knew this river, been on it hundreds of times. We're walking back to the boats. I hear him muttering under his breath, I'm not going to hit the rock. I'm not going to hit the rock. I'm not going to hit the rock. We're all kind of giggling at that, walking back to our boats. Well, Martin was the first one down. He got into his boat, started going around the bend. We couldn't see him because he went around the corner, but what do we hear? Oh, schmack. Oh no, it's our lunchbox. So we all pile into our boats, pull around the corner, and there's Martin. Our gear boat is upside down, sandwiches floating in the water. So we parked our boats and tried to package everything back up. So this story I tell you because it identifies a very important principle. Martin, he had 9 years on that river. He knew that river. He knew what he was doing, had run it 100 times. But that phrase, I'm not going to hit the rock. What does your mind picture as you say that phrase, I'm not going to hit the rock? It's focusing on the rock. It's focusing, each time you say it, it's focusing on the rock. Now, we've been talking in this course about how the mind interprets language. Remember that our mind creates pictures out of our words. And it's these pictures, mental pictures, that speak directly to the unconscious mind, the deeper mind, even the automatic mind. So if you're telling your automatic mind what it's hearing, the word don't doesn't translate, it's just picturing hitting the rock. I'm not going to hit the rock. I'm not going to hit the rock. So we want to make sure that the messages you're giving your mind about where you want to go are clear. I am successful. I am becoming more and more successful. I am figuring out my systems, my processes. So turn the negatives. The negatives are going to come up. That's part of humans, how we process the world. And also we recognize what we don't want, but make sure that you're staying focused on the positives that you want to create instead. So this is a really good principle. Make sure that you're creating brain-friendly messages because your unconscious is listening, your automatic mind is listening. So here's a way to cue your language into your brain is to, one, make sure that the words you use are giving that very clear direction. The second piece of this is a visualization exercise, and we've been doing some of this as we go. So as we've talked before about the unconscious mind, the language, once again, think of the unconscious as your expanded mind. If we were to turn the lights off in this room, bring in a flashlight, everywhere that light of the flashlight shines, that smaller part, is like our conscious awareness. We're only able to focus on a smaller portion at any one given time. However, our unconscious mind includes the whole expanse of all of the information that we're picking up and everything that your mind is running automatically in the background for you. So when we think about working with our motivation, a piece of our motivation, well, the whole part of it, motivation is really a feeling. And when we think about our expanded mind, our unconscious mind, what is it processing around how we're moving forward? So if we think of the ways that we speak to the unconscious mind, we have to speak to it in its own language in order to help it update. And its language is story, imagery, symbolism, metaphor, and feeling. More than words. Yes, words can inspire these things, but making sure that you're giving your mind brain-friendly messages. So that's how you can cue your brain into your plans. going through visualization. What does it feel like as you're moving forward with success? What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are you feeling? And making sure all of those aspects are working for you so that your mind has clear directions. So now sometimes, this is a interesting part, sometimes the way that we're picking our goals isn't what we really want. It's something else, a little more expansive, that we're actually thinking as to what our goal will get us. So here's a really great way to identify what it is that your mind thinks that goal will get for you, is by looking for the goal's higher purpose, or the plan's higher purpose. So think of your plan that you want to achieve, goal. What does it get for you? Now, this is a story that I want to share. Comes from a client, and we'll call him Ted, make up a name. Ted was feeling stuck in his career, and he wanted to make more money. He was an independent insurance agent, and he wanted more sales. And so here's how the conversation went. So he came in and explained what he was working for. And so I said, what is your goal? And he says, well, I want to make more money. So here's that magic question. What will that get for you? And Ted says, I won't stress as much. And now if you could stress less, what would that get for you? And Ted says, well, I would be able to relax. Okay, I'm thinking of that. What will that get for you? He says, well, I'll be able to enjoy life more. And what will that get for you? Well, I'll be happier. So what Ted really wanted was to be happier. However, this goal may or may not be a good fit, or this plan may or may not be a good fit for that happiness. If you're focusing too much on money, working hard to make money, spending extra hours, extra time, you could be actually missing the point. Sometimes when we go through this process and look for this higher why, what it's really about is not the thing itself, but it's more about what we think that it will get for us. So we could be missing the point even if we are making progress in the plan or goal that we're wanting to achieve. We could be making the money but missing out on the happiness that we thought would get for us. And so ultimately, somewhere down the line, we'll still feel unfulfilled, unsatisfied, because we've actually missed the thing that we thought we were creating. So the easy way to look for this is just to identify the thing, the plan, the goal that you have, and to keep asking this question. What does that get for you? What does that get for you? As you keep asking it, you'll start to go into more expanded states until you get to a sense of something. It's more like a feeling or an expanded way of being. Now, for a lot of service professionals, we are drawn to this work, we are drawn to this field because we want to help make a difference in people's lives. We want to ease suffering. We want to expand positive things in the world. We want to help people heal. And as we think about that, what does that get for you? Oh, that's that purpose beyond self, helping other people's lives get better. And in the process, our own life is also getting better through the process of helping others. So making money may not be a high enough motivator, but your big why, your higher why behind why you're doing what you're doing, that expansive feeling of helping other people, making a difference in the world, making a contribution, building a better world. That might be the thing that keeps you going through the process of building your business and being successful. Because it is a process and it does demand a lot. And the more that you tap into your higher why, you'll find your inner resources of motivation, focus, and commitment to what you're creating in the world and the part that it's going to play in people's lives. So, find your higher why. Yes, this is part of your homework for this week. So I'm going to have you go back through this process, and actually this process is listed on page 44. It has in the workbook, you can sit down and go through that process and really take some time to line it out. The process goes very quickly, but as you give yourself that think time, you'll really get to this higher why. And maybe you already know this higher why. If you keep asking that question, what does that get for you? It's quite possible you'll find multiple layers of this higher why behind it for you. All right, so find your higher why. So now there's looking at your plan. You've outlined what you're creating for yourself. And in looking at this, it's good to have a few distinctions in your plan. So one piece is to look more down the road, looking long term. You'll want to define a plan 1 to 2 years down the road. Now the medium range is things within 3 to 6 months. So these are things you want to create, achieve, do 3 to 6 months. And then short term is 1 to 3 months. Identifying this bigger picture and then the smaller chunks of it help to keep things in perspective. Because if we're focused too much on the short detail stuff, what happens is that we miss the bigger picture because we're not planning for it. And we get caught up in things like answering emails or voicemails. Yeah, they're important, but they're little things. The little details take our time and we're not putting energy toward the bigger vision. So really take some time to define this out. And this is on that next page, 45. And it's a good idea to have a couple long-term plans, medium range, and then short-term. And from defining that bigger vision and dialing it down to the smaller chunks, you start to recognize that you really can create that big vision. It just is a process of these smaller chunks. So if you have this idea that you want to write a book, that you want to build a successful business, even something big like, I want 100 employees and I want to be shipping stuff all over the world, that could be part of your bigger plan. So then when you start chunking to the smaller steps, you can really see that it is a process. And yes, you can do it. Part of it is, what is the definition of success that works for you? I've also worked with a lot of business owners that even though they've been really successful, made huge businesses, they were sacrificing their personal life. And so over time, they burnt out and they didn't want to do it anymore. This is a reoccurring theme I see. So if you're really committed to your business, you're actually going to commit to yourself as well. Self-care, taking care of yourself, taking care of your life, making sure that your business fits your life